It is my pleasure to introduce my good friend Luke Beckman. Luke is the founder of Beckman Ready, a social impact venture with a mission to make preparedness easy and readiness a state of mind. Luke has 15 years of on-the-ground public health and disaster response experience. He teaches crisis leadership across the US and is both an EMT and an Eagle Scout. I think you're going to find what he has to say very compelling and comforting at this time where we're facing so many crises across the US. So without further ado, I will toss it over to you, Luke.
Thanks, Heather. It's good to be with everybody tonight. I know there's a lot going on in the news. We've got wildfires in California. We've got a big hurricane headed for Texas and Louisiana. And I know a lot of you are here with us because you're worried, you're concerned, you're seeing the news, and you really want to know, what can I do? Or what's going to happen to me? What's my risk? What might happen to me and my family? And what we wanted to talk about tonight is it doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to necessarily be hard. So we're going to give you a lot of different pro tips, tricks, tools, strategies that really help you kind of think through what an emergency is and then how you and your family can get through it smoothly. So that's what we're going to talk about. I know we have a lot of Californians. We have a lot of people out west. You don't have to be from California, and we love you all. But a lot of people are worried about wildfires. We've got a lot of questions that have already come in about that. So I'm gonna talk for a second about wildfire risk. But we're going to talk generally about risk and what that means and where you live. But basically, every one of us is at risk for the most common disaster out there, which is a house fire. And most people don't think about house fires as a disaster. But when you look at what happens, when you look at the numbers, the most likely thing to happen to you, to your family, to your friends, is for there to be some kind of fire in the house. Might be a cooking fire, might be on Thanksgiving, might be around Christmas time with the Christmas tree. But a lot of us get burned out of our homes. And that's the kind of disaster or emergency where we have to leave. We can't stay in our houses. With COVID-19, we have the other kind of disaster where we sort of shelter in place. So with disasters, you're either going to stay home or you're going to go somewhere. And most of the emergencies that we're going to talk about are ones where you have to go somewhere. So whether it's a hurricane, a flood, a tornado, a house fire, a wildfire, a typhoon, a tsunami, you've got to leave home and go somewhere. Now, we're not talking about the end of the world. We're talking about the kind of thing that's probably going to keep you out of your home for maybe 3 days, 72 hours or so. And hopefully you get to come back home and your home is fine. There's a chance that your house could get damaged or destroyed. We'll talk a little bit about what you can do and what that recovery might look like. But for the vast majority of us, we're going to be able to return back home. Right now in California, there's several 100,000 people who are evacuated. We're seeing the same along the Texas Gulf Coast. Most of those people are going to be able to go back home. But we're going to see lots of stories in the news of people who lose their homes. And so we've got to be thinking about that emergency before it happens, because otherwise, here we are standing, the disaster happened, and we don't have a plan. So the purpose of tonight is we're going to come up with a plan. So the first thing I want to talk about when it comes to risk. Risk is hazard times vulnerability. The hazard is how likely is it for that disaster, that bad thing to happen. Right? If you live in California, well, if you live in the mountains near a whole bunch of forests and wilderness, your fire hazard might be high. But if you live in California and you're in downtown San Francisco or downtown Los Angeles, it's really unlikely that a wildfire is going to come and burn where you live. You might see smoke, but the fire isn't going to affect you. The vulnerability, that's something you can actually control. Your vulnerability might be, how healthy are you? How much money do you have in the bank? How strong is your social support network? So that's what vulnerability is. So just because your neighbor who lives next door is panicking, they might have a very different vulnerability and thus a very different risk than you do. So what I wanted to start with, for those of us who are wildfire fanatics out there or people concerned about fires, I want to share with you a really powerful resource that's A, it's fun to look at, but B, it's got some really important information that most people don't really know. So let me share my screen real quick. And this site is called wildfirerisk.org, and you can go ahead and put the / for explore. But let's take out the explore just so you can see what it looks like. All right, so wildfirerisk.org takes me to, I can understand, explore, or reduce my risk. We're going to explore it today. And when I go to explore, I see we have a couple people from Santa Cruz, and Santa Cruz has got some big fires burning up in the Santa Cruz Mountains. So let's go ahead and put in our community, Santa Cruz County, California. And we've got 4 little tabs up here. Heather, I think we can all see those tabs, correct?
Yes.
All right. So the first one is risk to homes. So you see here downtown Santa Cruz, like I said, that's an urban area. There's a lot of pavement. The risk to your home is not that great. But if you live up here in the mountains, close to Los Gatos or up in Scotts Valley, there's a little bit more risk, right? And when we talk about wildfires, wildfires are bad when you basically have high winds, dry air, you have hot temperatures, right? High temperatures and fuel load. That's a lot of dead plant matter that can burn, right? The fires need something to burn. So when you put all those four things together, we have likely wildfires. Now you can see here, Santa Cruz County actually is got, which is super cool. They have greater risk than 44% of counties in California for fires, right? That risk to homes. So we're kind of sitting sort of in the middle here, right? And then we've got the consequence and the likelihood. How bad is the fire? How likely is a fire to happen? You also have something here called exposure type. What this basically means is, are you directly exposed to flames, meaning close to trees, or is it likely for an ember, right? Something to blow into your house, not quite a burning tree. So that's the exposure type. Then we have the likelihood. So what this means is just how likely is fire. So you can see here, downtown Santa Cruz, right? Not a lot of likelihood, right? We got surf shops, we got sandwich shops, we got the boardwalk, but up in the mountains, very high likelihood of fire. So depending on where you live, not everybody in California is at high risk of a wildfire. And then vulnerable populations. This is a big one. So you have 6 categories. If somebody is living in poverty, if they have a disability, if they're over 65, if they have difficulty with English, maybe they don't have a car, or if they live in a mobile home, those are people who are more at risk for fires. So that's something to think about too. And when we talk about that vulnerability, people are more vulnerable who don't have money to repair or recover or prepare, but people who can't move as easily. And this is true if you're looking at a hurricane, right? I can't evacuate as easily. It takes me more time. But then people who don't speak English or who are older might not have the same kind of access to information. So those people are also more vulnerable. So what I wanted to do now is talk about I'll stop sharing here. What I want to talk about is, how do you know about any kind of disaster or emergency that's about to happen? Well, I always say, if you don't know, you can't go, right? If I don't know that there's an emergency coming, then I can't respond to it and I can't keep myself and my family safe. And I know a number of you might be saying, well, Luke, like, I'm good. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm strong, I'm a champion, I'm a superhero. Think about your family and think about your friends, right? Your family relies on you much more than you know. And that could be family in the same town as you, or that could be family on the other side of the county, the state, or the country. And so think about your aunts, your uncles. Did somebody just have surgery? Does somebody have a whole bunch of medications? Is somebody on insulin because they're diabetic? Does somebody use a wheelchair to get around, right? Think about those different things for your family. Did somebody just move to a new city? Maybe they don't know what the risks are. So it's not just about us, it's about our family, because I might be safe, but if my aunts, uncles, parents, brothers, sisters, if they're not safe, I'm going to be a mess, right? I'm going to be freaking out all over the place. So when it comes to alerts, the first thing I'm going to tell you is, right now, I know we've all got our phone. It's probably within arm's reach. So grab your phone, your iPad, whatever. Go ahead. It's going to take you 2 seconds. Go to the App Store, go to the Google Play Store, download the American Red Cross Emergency Alerts app. This app is fantastic, and here's why. It's free, so that's cool. But more importantly, you can put in your home address. You can put in your school, you can put in daycare, work. Now, I know a lot of us are staying at home with COVID right now, and that's good, but you might be sending the kids back to daycare already. You might be going to work. You can put in those locations so that if an emergency happens in those areas, you'll get a notification, right? There's a tornado watch or warning, or there's a hurricane coming, or there's a flood warning. You'll get those notifications, and you can put in family members' locations as well. The other thing that app gives you is really easy checklists. So what do I do for a wildfire? What do I do for a hurricane? What do I do for a tornado? It gives you sort of ABC 1, 2, 3 kinds of steps to help you prepare. So that's a great app. The next thing I was going to give you is, think about alerts. You need to know, is it time for me to evacuate? I know a lot of us are sort of on edge, right? There's a fire somewhere, there's a hurricane somewhere. Is it time for me to go? Do I have to go? You can go to, if you live in California, go to beckmanready.com/alerts. And we actually have county by county sign up. You can click on your county and it takes you right to the sign up link for your local emergency alerts. If you live in the rest of the country, still go to beckmanready.com/alerts. And we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 step for how you can sign up for your local alerts. But if you don't want to do that, go onto your web browser, Google, Yahoo, whatever you use, and just search your county's name or your city's name and search emergency alerts. We've tried to make it easy for you because sometimes you have to click and click and click and search and find and scroll, but we're trying to link you directly to those alerts. When you sign up, you're usually going to have the option to sign up for text messages, phone calls, or emails. And you can turn on all three of those or just pick one. Now, if you know a hazard is coming, right, the hurricane is coming, you may want to turn on those phone calls again because you want to be woken up if it's time to evacuate. And also with alerts, if there's a fire close or a hurricane close, plug in your phone, turn it on loud. I know it may wake you up in the middle of the night, but that call might save your life. So that's really important. And also, if you're going, text or call your friends, right? The evacuation's happening. Don't let people suffer in silence, right? You want to give them that heads up. So that's a really important thing when it comes to alerts. If you're on social media, I know a lot of us are turning it off, but a lot of us can't stay away. If you're on social media, Facebook and Twitter are the two best places to go to get real-time information from your law enforcement agency, which could be police, it could be sheriff, depends on where you live, could be both. Also your fire department, and then also your emergency management agency. So do a little search, right? If you're in Santa Cruz, search Santa Cruz County Sheriff, search Santa Cruz Fire Department, search Santa Cruz Emergency Management. And with that, what that's going to do is if you follow them, they're going to tell you who's evacuating, neighbors. They usually have pictures of the neighborhoods that are evacuated. They'll tell you when people are repopulating, coming back in. They'll have resources about where to go, recovery centers, what phone numbers to call, all that stuff. So they're on social media and they're keeping that up to date pretty well. And that's generally true across the country. So they might get overwhelmed in the middle of the emergency, but go ahead and give them a follow, and that's really going to help you out staying informed, right? We've got to know so that we can go. Next, I want to talk about what do you bring, right? We have most emergencies are going to cause us to leave the house. Now, I know there's a lot of us who are preppers out there and we've got our bunkers and our stash of food for a year and our ATVs, we're ready to roll. Most disasters aren't going to be catastrophic, right? You're going to be able to come back. You're going to be able to build back. Your community's not going to disperse and everybody's not going to turn into riots. So what do we put in our bag that works for these kinds of situations? For the wildfires, the hurricanes, the floods, the tornadoes. The first thing I want you to do, there's all kinds of resources. On BeckmanReady.com, we've got some great blogs, some great information that talks about, do I buy a kit? Do I build a kit? Should I even have a kit? Here's what I'm going to tell you. You should have a kit. Even if you don't think you live near any kind of disaster, you might have to leave your home quickly, right? Maybe your wife is having the baby and you got to go to the hospital, right? Or maybe you booked a last minute ticket to go somewhere. I know that seems far-fetched for us right now, but maybe you're taking a last minute trip or you're going to the gym or you forgot something. You can grab a bag, go. So what do I put in the bag? The first thing I want you to do is pack a bag for a long weekend. Think it's Memorial Day weekend. I'm packing for 3 days. What do I bring? I want you to make sure you've got long pants, maybe a light jacket, some gloves, and a hat. Throw that in there. Then I want you to think, well, you got to keep your phone charged, right? So get a power pack, something that could charge your phone 3 times. So I have at least 10,000 milliamp hours, maybe up to 20,000. You can get these for $20 online. There's a bunch of different ones. We'll have links to resources in the go bag and what do I pack. We'll have resources in the description below. But I want you to think about, you've got to charge your phone. You need a cord to charge your phone. You're likely going to take your car if you're evacuating somewhere. So make sure you have a charger in your car. And then I want you to think about light. You need to be able to see. I'll tell you, a lot of disasters happen in the middle of the night. So get a flashlight. I always recommend, as a pro tip, get a headlamp. And the reason why, A, you look super cool and it messes up your hair. But number 2, it keeps both of your hands free to do whatever you need to do. Maybe you're carrying something, helping somebody out. I always put 2 sets of batteries in with my headlamp, put in a little Ziploc bag. So that way, batteries sometimes corrode. Well, this way it keeps them fresh. They're not going to lose them. They're not going to roll around and fall away. And I always got a switch so I can switch in and out with that headlamp. You can get great headlamps for $20. So we've got links to that as well. So I've got some clothes. I've got some warm stuff. I've got my headlamp. First aid kit's always good, right? The most common thing, you're going to get dehydrated. You might get a headache. First aid kit's got some, Tylenol, ibuprofen, things like that, some Band-Aids for small things. But I want you to think about now, okay, well, how many of us take medications, right? So think about, for your meds, it's critically important that you stay healthy after an emergency, because that's actually the most likely time for you to get really sick. So think about having an extra set of your medications. So put them in that go bag. Now, I know they all have expiration dates. So what I do is look at your meds, pull out the pills, see the one that expires first. So let's say it expires September 30th. I'm going to go into my calendar on my phone and I'm going to set a reminder on a month earlier, August 30th, to say, switch out medications, right? So I'm going to do that. So keep those medications in your bag. Having documents are really important. Now, you may not, I know a lot of us don't have printers easily these days, right? But think about what you can do with your phone. Take some pictures of your important documents. Save those contacts of your doctor, your hospital, your health insurance card, homeowners, marriage certificate. We've got lists. You can go to beckmanready.com. We've got lists of the important documents that you can have. So we're going to have those documents backed up. Medications, we can put those in the bag. The idea of this go bag is that you don't have to think. You just grab the bag and go out the door. And the clothes and all this personal stuff, you're not going to get that in a lot of those bags that you buy online. They may not even have space for you to stuff it in. But then everybody says, well, what about water and food? Well, that's really important. Good news is you can survive for a while without water, right? We talk about 3 days without water. We talk about 3 weeks without food, but you don't want to be getting in that position. So what I always do, keep a gallon of water in the car. Next time you go to the grocery store, buy one of those gallons of water, 79 cents, whatever it is, just throw it in the back of the car. Always good to have a couple gallons in the house. We talk about a gallon per person per day. So for each person in the house, you should have 3 gallons of water. Now, when that comes to your go bag, get 2 water bottles, like 2-liter bottles or quart bottles, just throw them in the bag, right? Next time you go to the grocery store, just buy 2 bottles of water, throw them and keep them in your bag. If you keep that water out of the sunlight, it'll last you forever. All right, so that's the water. When it comes to food, there's all kinds of fancy stuff and dehydrated food and meals ready to eat and, water survival bars when the sharks are circling around your raft. Think about the power bars that you like, right? High energy foods, nuts, dried fruit, whatever that is, stuff that'll last a long time, that's easy and that you actually want to eat. Throw some of that in the bag. That's going to keep you from going hungry. That's going to keep the brain going, and you'll be able to find food somewhere, right? This is a go bag. This isn't the world is ending and I need to live for 2 years bag. So when you put all this together, right? Now with COVID, throw in some hand sanitizer, an extra mask, right? Now I've got all this in the bag. I can just grab it and go out the door. Do you have any pets or young kids? Think about infant formula. I want you to think about, okay, I need an extra leash, a collar, a food bowl, maybe a water bowl, some extra water for my pet, a list of the vaccinations that my pet has, right? The vet's name. Make sure that's in your go bag or right next to it, because the last thing you want to do is get out, you're safe, you're ready to go, and you forgot stuff for your pet. We don't want you worrying about that. So that's kind of what we look at when it comes to a go bag. When it comes to evacuations, right? Okay, it's ready for, I think I have to go. I want you to think, in most cases, if we've got the alerts, we know the emergency, we know the disaster's coming. Even with a wildfire, there are some times where it's coming really fast, but we've got our go bag, we're out the door, right? We don't have any time to plan. But if we have any time to plan, you might have 5 minutes, right? So we actually have for you, we've got a 5-minute checklist on Beckman Ready. We'll have the description in the link below. So a 5-minute checklist, right? What can you grab, right? Maybe you've got an heirloom or you've got important documents that your family really, really cares about. Those are things you could grab in 5 minutes. And you're not scrambling, grabbing clothes and things like that because you've got your go bag. Another pro tip I'll tell you is, let's say you forgot the go bag or whatever, grab your dirty clothes bag. And you may say, well, look, why am I taking my dirty clothes? Because those are the clothes that you've already worn. They're appropriate for the temperature that you're in right now. And they're probably clothes you like because you worn them. Now, they might be dirty and you don't want to wear them again. But you can go find a laundromat. You can find a place to go do your laundry. But at least that gets you something, and they're already in a bag. So you don't have to try and grab people. And here's an interesting tip. When it comes to evacuations, people kind of black out. And people will grab the most random things. I've seen people grab, you name it, right? People grab a watermelon, they grab a bike helmet, they grab a pair of high heel shoes, and that's what ends up in their car. And they're like, how did this happen? I hear it over and over again. So you don't want to be that person. You want to actually have useful things in the car, and having tools. And we have on our site, we talk about, there's duct tape and having a multi-tool, and we can make this bag as fancy as we want. We could spend $1,000, but we wanted to give you some really easy, practical tips where you really don't have to spend more than maybe $20. Having cash is really important before you go. I'd keep some of that in your go bag or keep it in the car or the glove box, because a lot of times ATMs don't work. The gas station may not be able to take your card. So having cash is important. We try to keep $5 bills. The reason why we keep $5 bills is because that way, if they can't make change, I'm out $5. I'm not out $20, right? So that's just a little pro tip there. Now we're talking about evacuation planning. So we've got some tips for the 5-minute and for the 1 hour, but things we can do just before the fire happens or the emergency happens. Does your car have gas? I always tell people, keep half a tank of gas in your car. That'll get you at least a couple 100 miles out of town, and you're not going to be worrying about filling up with everybody as they're trying to get out of Dodge. I always say evacuate early. And the reason is the roads get clogged, and you don't want to be one of those people stuck in 4 hours of traffic on the 1-lane road trying to get out of town. So evacuating early, keeping gas in your car, that's going to help you get out the door faster. Keeping your car facing out of the driveway, right, in the direction of travel you're going. So you don't have to worry about trying to get out of the parallel park or flip the car around or backing out at night when you're panicked and the blood pressure's up, right? So those are little tips that can really, really help you. It might even save your life. So that's the evacuation planning piece. Now, I also want to talk about how to prepare your home. And we're going to focus on wildfire, but hurricane comes in with this as well. There's a lot of tips, and we've got these on beckmanready.com. And when it comes to a wildfire, and I see we've got some more questions coming in from the folks who are looking at fires right now from their windows. Most fires burn homes because of embers that get in the house. It's not this big wall of flame that consumes your whole house. What it is, the fire kicks up a whole bunch of wind, and there's an ember that just kind of floats through the air, and it gets in a hole in your house. The embers, the fire will find the weakest part of your house. That's how it's going to get in, and that's how it's going to burn the house. So the first thing is, if you've got stuff lying around outside, you need to get that inside. So think about chairs with cushions, think about rockers, think about things lying around, garden hoses. A lot of fires will burn, and they'll actually burn right up to the house along a fence. So fences that touch houses, that's just, think of that like a fuse that and then hits your house, right? So all of those little things are really important. We've got tips for that on Beckman Ready. There's lots of those, and I won't get into all the details. But you need to think about, did you leave the house and forget to close the garage door? A lot of fires will get in because things will burn in the garage. That's why I say have the car out, have the car ready so you can close the garage door. Keeping the lights on for wildfires, that's really important. So firefighters know where your home is. If you trust leaving your house unlocked, they can actually get in and put out the fire sometimes. If you've got a gate or a fence, make sure that's open, because a lot of times they can't get in to fight the fire. Make sure you can see the address on your home. That's important for a house fire. That's important if you call 911 for anything. They need to be able to find your house. I know a lot of us like to hide the house number somewhere. So all of these little things we've learned from people who've survived and been through fires, and we've learned ourselves. And it's also important, think about the chimney and the gutters and all that. A lot of fires will start because an ember gets into the leaves in the gutter. I know that one takes some time. But also, if you've got some time and the fire's not coming and you're still thinking, okay, Luke, I've got a little time, I want to plan for this. That 5-foot perimeter around your house is critical, right? So any dead trees, leaves, dry bushes, plants, anything that's really flammable, the goal is to try and clear that out. We talk about defensible space. And what defensible space means is all the firefighters are doing, right? We don't really control, we don't contain the fire. We try to keep it, while we talk about containment, we don't stop the fire in its tracks. We try to guide and mold the fire so that it doesn't burn homes. The fire is going to do what the fire is going to do. We try to get ahead of it to cut the line so it eventually stops and then contain it ultimately. But what we're trying to do is protect homes. And so all of that stuff that you can do to keep flammable things away from your house, that's going to buy time for firefighters to get on your property and try and fight that fire. So that's a really important thing. So thinking about that defensible space, we've got some really good resources on the site that talk about, and we pull from the best. We pull from CAL FIRE, we pull from the U.S. Forest Service, some really progressive fire districts and agencies that have really thought about this the right way. So defensible space is really important for your home. So we talked about how to prepare yourself, how to prepare your home. Medications, that's a really important one, talking about the healthcare side of things, because you don't want to get sick because of the disaster. And one last pro tip before we go to some questions, get a pair of old shoes and put them under your bed. Do that right now while you're listening to this. The reason why is most people, let's say we had an earthquake, let's say we had a fire. A lot of people run outside barefoot. You'd be surprised. What do? They get splinters in their feet. After an earthquake, the most common injury, glass in the feet, right? If there's a flood, you're stepping on stuff under the water. You don't want to play around with that. So when you evacuate, slip on that pair of shoes, because sometimes it happens in the middle of the night. Slip on that pair of shoes, and now you're out the door, right? Your feet are fine. Now you're not in line with your 10,000 best friends in the hospital waiting to get a piece of glass or piece of wood pulled out of your foot. So that's a really easy one. Doesn't cost you anything. So that's the last tip we wanted to give you. We've got a lot more resources, but we wanted to give a high-level picture that talks about some risk, thinking about alerts, that go bag, and then also thinking about how you get out of your home safely. So Heather, let me go back over to you and for some of the questions that we have.
Thanks, Luke. This is so helpful. I'm definitely learning a lot, and I hope everyone else is. A couple questions that have come in for folks who are not in an immediate fire zone, but are nearby enough that they're experiencing low air quality, like bad air quality, high
Yeah.
air quality. What are some of your recommendations and resources, and what would you advise those folks?
Well, in 2019, 18, 17, or in the past, I'd say you want to look for an N95 respirator or greater, because those are things that will actually help keep some of those smoke and soot particles from coming into your lungs. Now we're in COVID and it's hard to get N95s, so that's tricky. But any kind of face covering will actually help with filtering out something. It may not be a lot, but I think the biggest thing I can say is stay home if you can. I know a lot of us are already doing that, but now is not the time to go do wind sprints on the track, right? That's not what we want to be doing. We want to stay home. So the air quality inside is going to be a little bit better than the air quality outside. Homes have some kinds of filters. You can look at upgrading your filters. You can look at getting room size filters that clean the air. And I know in a lot of areas those are selling out, but you can find those on Amazon or online, and we'll get some links to you for that. A lot of communities will set up sort of clean air stations where they bring in big filters where you can kind of go and just get some clean air for the day. But you can also just look for cracks in the house, right? Because with your air conditioning unit, if you have it, it's going to have some kind of a filter, right? Get a couple things out of the air. And so look under the door and just look for cracks there to try and keep the air out. But again, this is not the time to be doing a whole bunch of cardio exercise. This is the time to just kind of keep the lungs calm and cool and collected. But if at any point you really are having respiratory compromise, right? It could be the smoke, it could be COVID these days, it could be both, we don't know. But if at any point you really are feeling that it is impossible to breathe, that's really the time to call 911, right? You don't want to suffer and just say, I can tough through this, because by the time that you really go to the hospital, right, if you wait, it might be a lot harder to do better at that point.
Awesome. Then we have a question that came in earlier. What can we do to help folks who are in those vulnerable populations that you mentioned?
I think share this video with them, or just, share the knowledge that you have with them. I know a lot of us have been knocking on neighbors' doors, but check in on your family members, right? Now is a good time to call and say, how are you doing? Do you have your go bag? Are you prepared? Those kinds of conversations. So a lot of the stuff that we talked about doesn't cost anything. A good way to make a really good friend with your neighbor is to offer to help, rake their yard or clear out some dead trees or debris. If you've got a chainsaw and you're one of those crazy guys like me, then maybe get some dead trees down or work on some of that. But I know for a lot of older neighbors, right, they can't get up in the gutters. So if you've got a ladder, go help your neighbors out, right? That could be something you do. But I think it's really about that positive outreach to other people. Ask them. Now you've got some information about things that can help you. And we've got on our Beckman Ready YouTube channel, we've got a whole series on wildfires where we talk through what are they and who's at risk and what can you do. So we've actually got some videos that talk through some of these pro tips and tricks on how to prepare the house and how to get the car ready to go and all of that. But I do think it comes to proactively reaching out to our neighbors, right? The firefighters, if you look around California, we don't have enough firefighters to fight these fires. They're big. These are the two big complexes, the two really big fires that are burning right now are the second and third largest fires in California history. And they're probably going to grow to be number one, right? So when you look at that, you've got to be self-reliant. People are going to try and come to help you, but if that's your only plan, it might be too late. So check on your neighbors, check on your family, check on your friends, take a couple minutes here and there and share these tips with them.
That's great. We have a question about insurance. So I have no idea what kind of apartment insurance I have right now. What do you recommend?
Well, for those of us in apartments, having renter's insurance is really important. If you don't own and you're renting, getting renter's insurance is really, really important. You can get renter's insurance for $9, $10 a month these days. And the reason why I say that is renter's insurance, sometimes it might cover loss of use, covers destruction of goods and property. But what that means is you're not out $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. Even if you lose all your stuff, you're healthy, you're okay, and your stuff is protected, right? We all have car insurance. I know we have to, but we don't have to have renter's insurance. Now, if you have homeowner's insurance, that's a big one, right? Because the fire, you could have wind, you could have fire, you could have smoke, you could have water damage from the firefighters. Homeowner's insurance covers most of that. And the other thing is, in a lot of homeowners insurance policies, there are loss of use clauses. So if you have to go put yourself up in a hotel because you're evacuating, they'll cover that. So it's important to know what insurance you have. So I would even take, that's a great tip. I appreciate that question. Take 5 minutes, 10 minutes, call your insurance company and say, if a fire happened, what's covered? And they'll actually tell you in plain language, because I know it's hard to read through those policies, but just ask the question of the insurance agent. And then there's additional insurance, flood insurance, earthquake insurance, maybe that, maybe you've got the funds for it. I always say insurance always ends up paying for itself in the end, even if it just gives you that calmness of mind and that feeling of, okay, I'm ready, right? If the worst happened in the world, I've got coverage for that.
Awesome. That gets us through all the questions.
All right. Oh, these are great. These are great questions. I really appreciate it. But again, we're thrilled to have been with you guys. Thank you for giving us your time. I know how precious and valuable it is. But go ahead and find us on. I think at this point we're most active on Instagram, but especially YouTube and BeckmanReady.com. We've got a lot of these tips. We've got a lot more coming your way. So we'll be doing a lot more of these trainings. If you find this helpful, reach out to us. You can get me Luke, Luke, at BeckmanReady.com. BeckmanReady.com. And we'll have my email in there too. But we do a lot of these trainings, and we love doing it. We've got a great team that prepares these. We've got a lot of people who are delivering these right now, although it's my favorite thing in the world to do. And so we're very thankful for you being with us. But with that, have a good night.